Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast with Blaha. And today I'm having fat-free Greek yogurt, frozen cherries, and almond butter. Now let's talk a little bit about volume recovery. Something we're going to talk about a lot, and we'll continue to talk about a lot. And it's something I've noted even in my own training. I try to break my own rules sometimes, and some of my results on certain lifts stall. I get overuse, inflammation, everything else because I don't listen to my own advice. At least I coach all my clients better than I coach myself. But, a little bit of self-depreciating humor aside, the problem we have with people who want to push tons of volume and more stuff is that it doesn't work. And people see all this stuff, these certain studies and certain evidence-based circles, which everyone else disagrees with in the community. They're just very popular. Push more volume, more volume, more volume. The issue is that if you're training hard, that won't work. And I know this goes back to what bodybuilders and other people for decades tried to call intensity versus volume, but that's really not the correct terms. But the idea is there. The idea holds true. In other words, if you train real hard, you can't train real long. Okay? I mean, you can, but it's going to produce less results. So that's the issue we run into, is the balancing the recovery time versus the training stimulus. Okay, because you have to recover from your training to grow. You also need minimum effective doses. And the truth is, if you start trying to do too many sets, your results plummet. Just like when we start looking at, again, weight starts going down on the bar, results plummet because you're getting fatigued. I'm not saying or talking about your 1 rep maxes, I'm talking about your work sets. We're talking about 10 rep sets. All right? We know this. There are studies on it. That any major factor that causes you to have to keep reducing weight on a given exercise produces less muscle growth. Produces less. It's an inferior training response. And what we run into is, again, a balancing work capacity and then balancing it with recovery, because you can have great work capacity. Or you can have someone who's in such good shape that they could walk in for one workout and do 10 sets of an exercise. They could, and maintain intensity pretty well through. They're usually people with a high level of conditioning and endurance background. Here's the issue. This is showing you an example of it can be done and still not work. They also don't recover and grow from it. Because just because they can do it doesn't mean that their body's going to accept it. Doesn't mean they're going to get results. But the point is, if you can't do it, it also isn't going to work. Because you still got to balance the recovery, the food, the sleep, the rest. And the truth is, what you find is that when you look at what the best coaches push out here, is that yes, volume. We need volume to get bigger. No one who, again, understands the science, the evidence, has good coaching experience denies that. In other words, you need multiple really hard sets. You need a decent number of reps to maximize muscle growth. But at a certain point, not only does that reach a point of diminished returns, it reaches diminished returns immediately, by the way. It reaches diminished returns by like your third set. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a regression. And it's not true overtraining, and I know some guys I really like will call it overtraining, but it really isn't. Overtraining is a syndrome. Overtraining always causes muscle loss. All right? We lose size and strength when we overtrain every time. What I'm talking about is just getting less progress. And yeah, there's volume thresholds based upon plenty of good studies that when you reach this point for any given muscle, any given recovery, that after that you gain less muscle if you keep adding more. Again, not diminished, it's not less per set. Your gains for the session drop off. You gain 20% less muscle than you could have purely by doing extra work. And getting this through to a lot of my younger clients is hard. A lot of them want more volume. When in reality, they would gain more if they would just do less. And I've had some of my strongest lifters do extremely low volumes, shockingly low. In other words, I want to say one of my early clients who we took from a low, like a 400 squat to a 500, from a 280 bench to a 320, he only did 10 sets a week per muscle. Right, and that's kind of trying to include the speed works and back off work. I was still messing with back off work back then, so he did do some of that. But I mean, realistically, lower body, he would do like 5 sets of box squats. If we were to add it up, figure out speed work and everything, 5 to 6 sets of box squats a week. We did good mornings, we did glute bridges, we did hamstring work. We did lots and lots of rows. It took him to a 500 squat in less than a year. Bench press, we did max work, we did speed work, right? He would do about 5 sets of supplemental presses every week. 5 sets. All right? It would be floor presses, it would be close grip benching. We did tricep work. Again, more upper back work. I went from 280 to a 320 bench, doing 10 sets per week for his chest, delts, everything else. 10 sets. Now, keeping in mind this is all rep work, so people say, oh, he just gained neuromuscular efficiency from the maxing. We only max twice a week. He had already been lifting heavy before that. Okay, he got bigger because all those sets were like 10 rep sets, right? They were in the 10 rep range. Some of them were 5 to 6, but most of it 10. He got stronger because we got bigger. It was enough to maximize muscle growth. Same thing, I can do a guy now who I've done a couple consultations back and forth with. We discussed training. He's probably going to come on as a client. He's been making progress. Used to do the whole aesthetic thing, did kinobody stuff. And if he comes on, we've talked about actually using him in vlogs. So I wouldn't rule that out coming up in the near future. We'll see what happens. But same thing for him. He only trains 2 or 3 days a week. He does like 5 sets per muscle group. But they're big movements and he pushes them really hard. The guy's big, he's in shape, he's benching around 300, deadlifting right around 500. You know, again, at a healthy body fat where you can see some abs. Guy's in good shape, he's jacked, he's drug-free. He trains like that. And that's the thing that he noted. He's like, that's all I can handle because I don't know how to program. He's like, I don't know how to periodize anything. I found that this is what lets me recover. Like the guy comes in and does maybe 4 exercises in a workout for 2 really hard sets. And that's it. And I'm giving you guys more extreme examples, but the idea here is the same. If you are pushing really hard, you can make oftentimes better progress off less total work. The only time volume starts to really benefit you, again, other than when drugs are in the equation, and there's a dose-dependent response, is when you're just not pushing them that hard. And you're making up for the lack of work with just additional workload. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.